Is it okay? Do you see this, the
Yes.
PowerPoint? Okay, so good morning, everybody. Good morning, all participants and the organizing committee of the colloquium. This is for the second time that I participate in this, and I do appreciate it greatly. Okay, the title of my paper is Heart in of Darkness, Green Forest versus Dark Space in Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Okay. So this is the plan of my presentation. Introduction. Number one, nature, environment versus identity. Number two, white, Eurocentric scenery in Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Number three, image making of the other, subject-object relationships. Number four, truth in of darkness, naturalness versus conventionality. Number five, monotheism versus monotheism, pilgrimage, and the conclusion. So, introduction. Human-environment relationship is very I don't have a problem with the screen. Okay.
Working, we see it.
I don't see the full. I have a problem with the. Okay, problem is solved. Yes, the human environment relationship is very important in the formation of identity and the understanding of the insights of the individual. The without is the projection of the within. In other words, a human being and environment coexist and define one another. We see ourselves through the environment, and we are part of it. We harmonize or we try to understand it. Anyway, it sharpens and builds up one's environment. And as you know, human being, culture, the mode of being, it depends on the relationship between environment and human being. In other words, the idea of geography has a great impact on one's behavior and on one's culture. And so such relationship, such friction with nature and human being, in a way, has to exist. Anthroposophy. Anthrom is human, Sophia means wisdom. It is a word coined by the esotericist Rudolf Steiner. It postulates the existence of an objective, intellectually comprehensive spiritual world accessible to human experience. Steiner emphasizes the humanistic orientation of his philosophy. Mysticism, the exploration of the spiritual world. According to Steiner, one's spiritual world in a way goes in harmony with the external world. We define one's internal with the external. And this is the idea which is purely mystic. In other words, if you want to appreciate nature, you give yourself to it. Because the forest, in fact, is for rest. It is a place for rest. It is there that in a way, we try to understand one's self. And here, this leads me to Ronnie Welleck and Austin Warren, who said, the house is the extension of man. Describe it, and you have described him. It means if I describe the room, I'm describing the inhabitants of the room. And so, if I describe nature, in fact, I'm describing the characters or people or individuals that live within this nature, because they exteriorize their within. So the without is a reflection of the within. Ron Lando said about imagination, it gets hold of experience of daily life and presents them to the inward eye of the heart. In the inward eye, they are magnified as though in a mirror, and it is the subsequently distorted image of those experiences that fill our dreams. It means our imagination is based on one's experience plus the inward eye. what is within you. And so what you say, what you utter, what you describe is a part of your own identity. This is the most important thing. If you ask me to define life, I cannot, but I can feel it. But life is felt because it is an ongoing process of antagonism. And there are three types of antagonism. Number one, man versus nature. Number two, man versus man. And number three, man's I versus man's other. Yes, man and nature. So we live with nature. We try to understand nature. We try to give oneself to nature. But when we fail, we have this kind of antagonism, a kind of survival. As we see in Heart of Darkness, the case of Kurds, he fails to understand nature. That is why he suffers and dies crying the horror, because of the incomprehensibility of nature. The second one, the second clash and antagonism that must exist, it is between man and man. Whatever is the race, whatever is the color, there must be this kind of antagonism, which is the surest way to give a meaning to life. Number three, man's I versus man's other. Yes, within us there is also an internal antagonism. The I that wants and the other that does not. Probably the I that refuses the other. Probably the I that is somehow trying to overcome his or its other. So otherness, and in a way, it is within us, outside of us. And human being, in a way, the other human being is nature. If we harmonize, we succeed. And if we fail, then nature is indifferent. In a way, we suffer. So, Mark Johnson, your identity is not locked up within you.
I like how they don't, put it in presenter.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Your identity is not locked up within you. It is not something wholly subjective. It is the identity of you in your world. It is the ongoing interaction with your situation in a shared world. So the external world must be shared because we identify oneself in a way. Nature is a mirror, and the external world is our mirror through which we see our selves. Still with Mark Johnson, there is no you beyond this embodied world in process. There is no fully fixed self, but only a self in process that is shaped by what experiences and enacts. Yes, still, life is an ongoing process, and this ongoing process, this change, there must be a change. Turning and turning in the widening Gaia, it must turn, we must move, we must change. And this world in the process must be changed through experience. We learn how to change. If not, we fail in such a change. Whether we talk of language, pictures, ideas, or beliefs, every representation has two sides, one as an ordinary thing in the world, and the other as an icon of the world. In other words, we have a fact, and any fact is a symbol. As I told you, a forest is a forest as a fact, but a forest is for rest. A tree is a tree, but a tree has a trunk and has branches. The trunk is the tribe, and branches is, in a way, the family, or the families, is the families. And so writing, whether in language or through pictures, is representing both sides in one's act of writing. Form and content are not forever separated. They are interconnected. The need to represent external reality as the source of internal reflection is replaced by empathetic identification, in which internal reflection expresses external reality. In other words, what is the form of a novel or of a painting? It is just the idea. It is the idea that shapes the form. So the form is a meaning, is an idea by itself. It represents something of the artist, probably something of his external world. Gerald C. Kapchik. I would go so far as to propose that the simultaneous engagement of sensory and symbolic processes is a hallmark of aesthetic experience. Art, therefore, challenges viewers to reconcile physical, sensory, and symbolic cues which are co-present in perceptual and cognitive experience. So, art is a representation of the external world. What you see is represented. Of course, we see, we grasp such, in a way, what we see through our physical or our organ senses. And we perceive them in a special way, and then we try to represent what we perceive through words. Still, the idea, okay, the ideal state of mind for the artist consists of a contemplation kinetically charged by a keen awareness of the body and its mere sensation. Yes, the body has sensations, and these sensations are sensibilities that have impact on the direction of the artistic composition of the author. Virginia Woolf develops visual aesthetics in which the empathetic perceptual self consisting of the eye and memory combines with the exterior to create the inner landscape. In other words, for Virginia Woolf, the outside landscape is only a representation of the inner scape. We will see the case with also Heart of Darkness, the landscape in a way of the forest of Africa and the inner landscape of Kurds in his inner station. Claude Monet, the French painter, for me, a landscape does not exist in its own right, since its appearance changes at every moment, but the surrounding atmosphere brings it to life. It is only the surrounding atmosphere that gives subjects their true value. Yes, we represent in a way through painting nature, but sometimes we find it as a mood, morals, and so on. And so it is this surrounding then that gives value to the subject. As we see in the Heart of Darkness, it starts with darkness and fog and ends also with darkness and fog. We have the sunset at the beginning, the first pages of the novel, and the sunset also at the end of the novel. So visual aesthetics resides in light and its different spectrum of colors, the prism. Of course, light has 7 colors, and these 7 colors are represented through characters, through styles, through symbolism within the novel. In Heart of Darkness, for example, Joseph Conrad emphasizes a lot upon light white and dark black. Light and white. Light, we find it really absent in the novel. Dark is dominating. This white is a hint to the white color of Europeans and black color of Africans. But all what is white turns to be black. Ivory is white, yet it is the source of strife, killing, and murder. So white at the outside, dark within. In other words, he wants to tell us that these white people are white-skinned but dark-hearted. These black-skinned people are black-skinned but light-hearted inside, because those who suffer more in Heart of Darkness are not only blacks but whites too. A white kills a white. White also is a white culture. So does this white culture save them in a place which is not theirs? We will see, of course, later on when we reach the explanation of, in a way, nature within the novel. Aesthetics, interpretation is firmly grounded in the body, and that images, whether represented through colors or words, are living forms to be appreciated for the meaning they convey and the sensation they arouse. Of course, simply here I want to say that the painter paints with colors, whereas the artist paints with words. So we have images with words, and so we can appreciate better and further. Ernest Hans Joseph Gambridge claims all artistic discoveries are discoveries not of likenesses, but of equivalences which enable us to see reality in terms of an image, and an image in terms of reality. And this equivalence never rests on the likeness of elements so much as on the identity of responses to certain relationships. These identities do not depend on the imitation of individual factors so much on configuration and clothes. In other words, what is an art? What is an artistic image? It is a representation of a reality. And when you say a representation, it's not a mimesis. It is the way to look at it and to represent it. So the reality of an image is a reality within this image, and within this image we have in a way the background of the artist, the way to perceive reality. And so any representation is not fully a kind of mimicry, but it is how reality is seen by the artist. Emily Sitzia, it is acknowledged that an image touches a viewer in different way than a text. The instantaneity of the image offered a more sensual and emotional reception, while the text was received in a more intellectual way. I can say more. Yes, according to Sitzia, so the image touches the viewer easily and quickly. But I think that even when we paint with words, also we create an image that we appreciate all along. So somehow we perceive and we try to understand what we perceive intellectually. It means what does it, what is meant by. So the second point, white Eurocentric scenery in Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. And when you say white means white, the white color, and white, the second one is culture, means the white culture of Europeans, Eurocentrism. Eurocentrism is a philosophy which makes of the European eye the only reference of any judgment and evaluation. So any person who is not European must be an other and must be judged through the eye who is the subject, and the other is the object, and whose value is seen through Eurocentrism, whether to be aggressive, savage, and civilized. So the reference is Europe, but not anything else. The image making of otherness is the representation of the person who projects his mind into it. Yes, so the representation of the other is just an image built up and made up on European Eurocentrism. An other is an other. He is thingified, if I use the term of Baba, Homi Baba. Thingified. He's an object that has no value because and he lacks civilization. And so it is our role to civilize him, to make him an I, though he can never be so. To be an other is then to be silenced and dependent, because there is no open possibility for him to change or to reach the European referent. So the referent is the European, and whatever is this other is trying to do, to make, to be like European, he cannot, because the problem is to be an I. When the object becomes a subject, the European, he must renounce to his own root, to his own race, to his own culture. And this is a problem. The self-justification of imperialism was an idea of conquest of other people to usurp their riches and lands. And so imperialism justifies itself by thinking that they have the role to civilize. Many overseas conquests have been done and had been done, so on, but the aim is not really to civilize, but rather in a way to take riches and lands. And here there is an African critic who said about Europeans, when they were at home, we had our Bible, they had their Bible, and we had our lands. When they came, they gave us their Bible and they took our lands. Though ideas seem to be related to facts, they are nonetheless primarily a mental construct. Every other, therefore, is a project of apprehension of the outside world through the inside. So every other is made up by Eurocentrism. The apprehension of truth during the construction of the other is a construction without correspondence to the external reality. So the truth of Europeans is the truth of Europeans, but not the universal one, because it does not correspond in a way to external reality. That is why what makes sense in Europe does not make sense in Africa. We see, for example, those who suffer more psychologically are whites, because they're in a place which is not theirs. The white kills a white kills a black. And so white and white, they kill one another. Because of what? Because of ivory, such white color, which is, and this white color has been given a sense, a meaning, a value by this European culture. And so they went there just to take riches and to, let's say, to enrich themselves and to look for commercial exchange. The colonizer considers himself as the embodiment of good culture, while the colonized is labeled as the root of evil and savagery. So they are evil, they are savages, and it is our role as Europeans to civilize them. Becoming the master in a land which is not theirs, Europeans accumulate a surplus morality, which becomes a means and an end to invest in the denigration of the native. I think it's clear. A quote from the novel. This is what Marlowe, in a way, has said about Europeans. They were conquerors. And for that, you want only brute force, nothing to boast of when you have it, since your strength is just an accident arising from the weakness of others. He wants to tell us that you, the Europeans, are strong because the others are weak. That's all. So it's just an accident. It is a weakness. That is why then you colonized them. This is what he said. So any act of domination is a transgression against other people who are supposed to live within their own land, their own territories, and their own culture. They belong to the land, and the land belongs to them. In other words, Africa belongs to blacks, and blacks belong to Africa. And so what makes sense in Africa does not make sense in Europe, and vice versa. That is why Europeans, when they embarked on the Congo River, they fail to understand. That is why Kurt said, exterminate all the brutes. Though they were sent by the Society for the Suppression of Savage Behavior to teach people how, to civilize people. But in fact, it's to colonize more than to civilize. They killed so many people. They mutilated so many people and so on, as we will see later on. Leopold's Congo Free State, La Mission Civilisatrice, civilizing mission, was supposed to eradicate barbarism and savagery. So, as I told you, Conrad was sent. Kurt was a philosopher, a scientist, a researcher, a painter, while in Europe. When he stepped the Congo River, he changed. He has become what he was not. He has become a vehement, in a way, killer. At the beginning of the novel, he said, if ever there is someone who tackles darkness, I am the man. But at the end of the novel, he suffers on, in a way, lying on the grass, the horror. And he was asked to write a report. Marlowe found the report torn. At the last, in a way, what has in a way attracted him is just this expression, exterminate all the brutes. So this is the civilizing mission. This is the end, the conclusion of the report that was torn, which means in a way brutish, savages. In other words, this idea in a way reflects the inner, this is the outer, but reflected the inner, because he failed to understand who are they, because the culture they have is artificial and not universal, and does not listen to the humaneness of the blacks. Who judges whom has become paradoxical. Yes, who judges whom? On which parameters? Can we see ourselves through Europeans? Do Europeans see themselves through us? Though this is the kind of antagonism in a way that I pointed at the beginning. But this reference, who is he? Are we obliged to judge oneself as civilized or savage via only one culture? No, because we have different geographies and so different cultures. And if we consider blacks as aggressive, savage, this is somehow through the European eye, because in a way it is a mode of living of these blacks, which is different from the European. And so, do we really judge them as in a way savages? This is also another problem. In the European mind, it is the nature of savagery and darkness of Africa that was the source of reply and impulse for imperialism to colonize and civilize. But in fact, if ever there is civilization, it is for their own. But mostly, they stepped the Congo River just to colonize, because even words used by Conrad, we have stations of commercial exchange. Because in a way, Leopold sent Société Anonyme Belge pour le Commerce du Congo. And so it is a commercial exchange. We have the inner station, so we have company station, inner station, central station. So stations for commercial exchange, nothing more. Marlowe. Also, this is the how he described these Europeans in the Congo River. Marlowe. They grabbed what they could get for the sake of what to be got. It was just robbery with violence, aggravated murder on a great scale, and men going at it blind, as is very proper for those who tackle darkness. The conquest of the earth, which mostly means the taking it away from those who have a different complexion or slightly flatter noses than ourselves, is not a pretty thing when you look at it too much. Edmund Morel, a journalist, in a way represented in a very, in a way, realistic way, what in a way the so-called civilized in a way did in the Congo River or in Africa in general. So systematic hand cutting and worse, forms of mutilation had been practiced all over the Congo territories for more than a decade. The mutilation of the dead and of the living must be assigned to the direct instigation of state officials and agents of the trust appointed to terrorize the rubber districts. The soldiers let loose through the country have been required to bring back tangible proof that proper punishment was inflicted, and the hands of slain or partly slain people were the readiest and most acceptable form of proof. Cannibalism, point number 3, is not only one of the most spread myths about other people, but also one of the most widespread metaphors for describing the relationship of the colonialist with the colonized people. Joseph Conrad here has used the word cannibalism in a very clever way. So, as I told you, we have the fact and we have the symbol. If ever in history we have heard about cannibalism there, but in the novel, there is no idea of cannibalism. Blacks did nothing, and he was stoned and astonished why they did not eat me. But those who have eaten, in a way, Africa, are the whites. So symbolically, they have devoured the land, the riches of these Africans. Kurds, in a way, has killed so many people, blacks and whites, and has cut their heads and has put them on poles around his inner station. Thomas Brooke reported the reaction of Europeans for celebrating the discovery of Africa. In April 1890, Brussels was dominated by festivities to his honor. The connection between Stanley and Ivory was made more than evident. At his becoming banquet, King Leopold had the room decorated with the tusks of 400 elephants, an important event in 1898. Kitchener, too, was welcomed by Queen Victoria. Just like Stanley, he was awarded an honorary doctorate at Cambridge, and he was celebrated for having opened up the Nile Valley to the civilizing influences of commercial exchange. So we see tusks, 400 of elephants. So this is a bone of an elephant. It is something natural for Africans, but it is very valuable for Europeans. So, but in the text, how is this other seen? Marlowe, the ascetic and Buddha-like character, is sick of these white colonialists who legitimate their domination with conversion and civilization. This devoted band called itself the El Dorado Exploring Expedition. I did it for a name, EEE, El Dorado Exploring Expedition. It's like the Ku Klux Klan, and it has the same end if you want. And I believe they were sworn to secrecy. Their talk, however, was the talk of sordid buccaneers. It was reckless without hardihood, greedy without audacity, and cruel without courage. To tear treasures out of the bowels of the land was their desire, with no more moral purpose at the back of it. Such idea of glorification of the knights of the empire, the ambassador of light, associates the Templar of colonialism to the glory of Europe, the gems of man, the seed of Commonwealth, the germs of empire. So such glorification of empire and the expansion of Europe all over the world is associated to Templars for pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Marlowe wonders why he and his companions have not been eaten by these men. They possess what Europeans do not, restraint. I looked at them, is a quote, with a swift quickening of interest, how unwholesome the pilgrims looked, and I hoped, yes, I positively hoped that my aspect was not so. What shall I say? Yes, I looked at them as you would on any human being, with the curiosity of their impulses, motives, capacities, weaknesses, when brought to the test of an inexorable physical necessity. Restraint, was possible restraint? Was it superstition, disgust, patience, fear, or some kind of primitive honor? So they have restraint, whereas Europeans are greedy and they do lack it. Marlowe says about Kurds, I saw the inconceivable mystery of a soul that knew no restraint, no faith, no fear. I think, this is quote, I think knowledge came to him at last, only at the very last, but the wilderness had found him out early and had taken on him a terrible vengeance for the fantastic invasion. It echoes loudly within him because he was hollow at the core. It means what makes sense in Europe does not make sense in Africa. And the culture they have, the morality they have is monotheistic. It is artificial, it is conventional. And so it does not make sense in the naturalness of the nature of Africa. Kurds generated into a savage, but these blacks, though they are cannibals, they did not eat any white. Kurds emerges as the more cannibalistic. Marlowe metaphorically represents Kurds' eloquence as a cannibalistic impulse. I saw him open his mouth wide It gave him a weirdly voracious aspect, as though he had wanted to swallow all the air, all the earth, all the men in front of him. More emphatically, in front of Kurds' fiancée, Marlowe reports how darkness did overwhelm Kurds and made him a part of the jungle and its cannibalism. I quote, "I had a vision of him on the stretcher, opening his mouth voraciously as if to devour all the earth with all its mankind." His lack of moral equipment and his devotion to inner voice and to monotheistic culture of his race are features that show his predisposition to be in league with darkness and the law of its jungle. Quote, "But his soul was mad. Being alone in the wilderness, it had looked within itself, and by heaven, I tell you, it had gone mad." Kurds' desire to cannibalize the world around made him swallowed up by wilderness itself. Even later, in the novel connotes such idea of consumption, cannibalism. Captain Freslevan was swallowed by the soil of the jungle, and only his skeleton remains. Marlowe found Kurds lying on the grass which covers his body. Quote, "In the afternoon, I saw him lying on his back with closed eyes." The V-shaped river is compared to a snake opening its mouth and trying to catch up birds while flying. Kurds was buried in a muddy hole. He was transformed to something, buried in and absorbed by the earth. Quote, "The voice was gone. What else had been there? But I am, of course, aware that the next day the pilgrims buried something in a muddy hole." End of the quote. Nature had made the only one, the chief of the chiefs, Kurds, something, and later nothing. Kurds is the product of the whole Europe. Quote, all Europe contributed to the making of Kurds. Through him, Conrad denounces, but at the same time describes how the so-called civilized European behaved. Kurds provides a striking illustration. They had come to Africa as an apostle of civilization, a member of the gang of virtue, but his morality disappeared when his trade goods exhausted. He began to use a local tribe to raid the country for ivory. In Heart of Darkness, two civilizations are in clash with one another. One makes sense only out there in Europe. The other makes sense only here in Africa. The Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit has become the company, the central and the inner stations. The former is monotheistic, the latter is monotheistic. The former forgives, but the latter punishes. Europeans are in the quest of the other, their other in Africa. The void outlands tends to be a void in the self, into the discovery of their other. Europeans have become more inward. The more they penetrate in the inner land, the more they sever from the external reality of facts, and the more they discover evil dormant within them. Heart of Darkness has shown that idealism of imperialism is no more than refreshment on parched sand. The idealistic civilizing mission of the civilized man is revealed to be a comforting illusion of modern empire. It is no more than an organized mission of barbarism. Conclusion. The offering, I have two quotes, one at the beginning, one at the end. This is at the end. The offering was buried by a black bank of clouds, and the tranquil waterway leading to utmost ends of the earth flowed somber under an overcast sky, dimmed to lead into the heart of the immense darkness. So we have the idea of darkness. This is the beginning of the novel. The sunset, we have the sunset. The dusk fell on the stream, and lights began to appear along the shore. Lights of ships moved in the fairway, a great stir of lights going up and down, and farther west on the upper reaches, the place of monstrous town was still marked ominously on the sky, a brooding gloom in sunshine, a lurid glare under the stars. Marlowe, now the last words of Kurds. I heard him mutter, live rightly, die, die. I listened, there was nothing more. Because Marlowe, Conrad said, live right, die right. So this is the final conclusion. Life is gray and incomprehensible. The more we know, the less we know. Whatever are our deeds, we are submissive to the seduction and indifference of nature. In the novel, blacks and whites suffer. The winner is nature. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor, for the presentation. Now we can have about 5 minutes for questions, if there are any from our audience. You can either ask directly or write them in a chat.
So I have a question. I'm Hussein Al Mamun, a participant and presenter for tomorrow from Bangladesh. I am professor and head of the Department of English at Shahjalalal University of Science and Technology in Sylhet, Bangladesh. So this is one of my favorite texts, and thank you very much for wonderful presentation in the perspective of nature and Eurocentrism. So I have only one question, that all Europe contributed to the making of cards or goods. So this is a fantastic concluding remark relating the other discussion. But I need to know, would you please share your views of the, I missed maybe some slides, that's why I'm asking whether I could not understand that whether it was in your earlier slides or not. So the report of Mr. Kurtz, exterminate all the goods.
Yes.
How do you relate that summary of his report from natural or European or black or white perspective? Thank you very much for wonderful presentation.
Okay, thank you. I do not understand it clearly well, but let me probably have just something. Okay, look, the idea of Joseph Conrad, he seeks the universal culture, the culture of all cultures, a culture that where a room is available for anyone. These blacks have the right to live. They have their own culture. They belong to this geography, and this geography belongs to them. You are inside in a place which is not theirs, and so you have to understand. But if you fail to understand, this is very psychological. So you have such a reaction. You react against anything. Joseph Conrad himself said, "Don't delve too far beneath the unknown, because you expose yourself to danger and therefore death." Kurtz has known, and so he must die in the inner station. This forest, it has the V-shaped, means the victory of nature over human being. Something else, we have evil outside of us and evil inside within us. And I have a quote here that sounds biblical. The eyes are the windows of the soul. If your eyes are sound, your soul is sound. But if your eyes are dark, your soul is dark, and how great is this darkness? And so they are overwhelmed. All Europeans, even Marlowe, has a kind of corruption when he threw the body of the black into the river. It is seen as a racist act, though I don't think so, because all of them, those who are dead in the jungle, are absorbed, are swallowed in a way by nature. We have the Fresleven who died, and his body is overgrown with grass. We have this scientific, this painter, this philosopher, the one who was sent for like a Templar for civilization and culture. He transformed into, he was crying, he failed to understand. Even there is no language between both. How do they live in harmony? Blacks do not, whites do not understand blacks, and vice versa. There are 3 words, I think. The black said, Kurt dead. That's all. In other words, he wants to tell us that the body of the other is the body of a brother. When, because on the boat upriver, in a way, the black dies, by an arrow from the darkness of the jungle. And downriver, Kurds dies. The one who knows of the death of Kurds is a black. He said, Mr. Kurds dead. And that's all. So there is no, they fail to communication because there is no communication. And these whites are not shielded, are not protected by their own culture because it is more monotheistic, more conventional. It is not natural. It is not based on our humaneness. Even in the accountant, within the novel, we find so many whites there. Marlowe wondered, why do what are they doing here? He said, oh, for nothing. They just come here in order to die. And so there's a kind of loss because of the incomprehensibility of nature. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. May
Thanks a lot.
may I share 2 or 3 sentences, if the administrator or the organizer permit me? May I share 2 or 3 sentences?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. So actually, when you incorporated the quotation, all Europe contributed to the making of cards.
Yes.
You answered well. I wanted to ask from European point of view that those who made Mr. Cards, he has produced exterminate all the brutes.
Yes.
That means that he performed the burden of the white man.
That's
From
good.
that
Yes.
point of view,
yes.
if we consider Edward Said's article, 2 visions of things fall apart, 2 visions of heart of darkness,
Yes.
how can we consider these report from African and from European point of view?
Look, Kurds. Kurds is a German name which means short. Shortness of life means death, symbolically. That's why he dies. He must die. To know is to die, according to Kurds, to Conrad. Marlowe knows only the surface reality. He fails to know, and failing to know has saved him. Kurds is in the inner station. He becomes an initiator. He becomes the guardian of the pilgrim of darkness. This ivory becomes a deity for them. They worship ivory. The religion is monotheism, and he's the guardian of the temple. And he lost what he learned because it is conventional and it does not make any sense in Africa, which is very natural. Yes, I said Kurds because Kurds, I think, is half English and half French, and his name is German. And so he summed up the Eurocentrism and the intentionality. Even the beginning of the novel, it starts by darkness, the fog of the River Thames. It was foggy. We have the sunset and waiting for water to come up and so on. So Marlowe tells the story on board the ship, but still it starts with darkness and ends with darkness. Something else. We have the sun fell. It is said that by criticism, not me, it is said that it is a hint to the decline of British Empire, whose sun never sets. It has a hint to this too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, the organizer, for arranging such wonderful conference relating nature and other discussions. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Okay, once again, thank you very much. I myself read the novel quite a while ago, so your presentation helped me to understand certain aspects of the novel much better. Okay, so thank you for that. And we can move